Thank you so much. You just fixed my camera for me. Anyway.
My pleasure. Although it was a very lovely headshot that you have, but it's nicer to see you in person.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. My daughter took that picture of me.
So the photography thing runs in the family then, is it? Or?
I think she's a better photographer than I am, but don't tell her. So tell me, Raphael, what's up? What is happening with all your, first of all, the bottle of champagne that I saw on Facebook?
Yeah, so it's been a very exciting few weeks as Corona is starting to come to an end and real life starting up. We had a successful run of Le Notte di Figaro I conducted at the university, at the Kunstuniversität here in Graz, Austria. So that was over, and then I just found out 2 days ago I was accepted to the doctoral program here at the Kunstuniversität.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very excited. I'm going to be researching different approaches to idiomatic writing for the voice and experimenting with writing music for each of the different Stimmfächer, which are the 25 different types of voices, from lyric soprano to dramatic mezzo-soprano to head and tenor, to all the different voice types. I'm going to be exploring what works for each voice type and what composers should be keeping in mind when writing for them.
Okay. And you say there are 25?
The handbook of opera by Kloiber says 25, but that's 25 operatic voice types. It doesn't take into consideration jazz voice types or musical theater voice types or folk. So how many I mean, the voice is unique for everybody, but there are certain parameters and guidelines which makes it easy to say, when I hear this type of a sound, it's that type of a soprano, or that a certain type of soprano, like a coloratura soprano, has a certain repertoire that they should be singing. So within the realm of opera, I'll be working. And we say that there are about 25 different voice types.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. Oh, wow. So we'll have to talk about that again because it sounds very interesting. But tell me about your opera on the 15th of July. Yeah,
exactly. So there's been, besides the Figaro and the doctoral program, there's also a world premiere of a new opera of mine coming up on July 15, 16th, and 17th at the opernfestival Oberpfalz here in Bayern, in Amberg. It will take place. Amberg is right between Regensburg and Nuremberg. It's an hour-long chamber opera, going back and forth between the languages, I don't know. Chamber opera for 3 singers and speaker, based on the fairy tale writer Franz Schönberg, who was born in Amberg. And for me, it's a particularly thrilling opportunity to bring a world premiere to a place that doesn't have much opera culture. So bringing opera to the people that don't have access to it, really.
Wow.
With a new work based on folk stories, fairy tales, and a historic figure who was born in this land. So for me, it's a very exciting.
And this was your idea to do it there, and to do this specific theme or idea?
Yeah, so the Open Festival Oberpfalz came to me with a commission for an opera. They said they wanted me to write a new opera for their inaugural year of the festival, which was supposed to happen last year, and due to Corona was moved to this year. And so I met with a librettist, Ruth Zapf, and we discussed possible ideas. And I said, I know that I want to write a chamber opera because that's what we have the funds for in the first year. And I wanted to do with something with the folk culture of the people, because if we're bringing opera, the whole idea of the festival is to bring opera to the place that, like I said, doesn't have access to it. And I think what better way to do it than to bring their own stories to light. And so I did some research, and I found on the Bay Air an article from 2010 about this, about Franz Schönberg, who was newly discovered. What was it, like a chest of his fairy tales and poems were discovered after like 200 years of just sitting in some castle somewhere. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. And then I looked up, where is he from? Oh, he's from Amberg. That's great. Then I ordered the books and read the fairy tales, and they were exciting. And the Grimm brothers knew him and stole some stuff from him. And so he's a really interesting historical figure. And so I said to Ruth, can we do something with with him. And then the librettist is brilliant. She did a wonderful job and came up with this idea, inSOMNIA, which happens, we take this historical figure, Franz Schönberg, and his fairy tale figures come to him in his dreams and say, no, you have to tell the story like it really happened, not what the people are saying. The people have their opinion of what the fairy tale was, but what really happened is this, because he went from town to town collecting fairy tales from people. And so the figures come to him.
That's amazing. How do you come up with such an idea? It's really, I find it fascinating. So, and then this, so you said 3 characters in this opera.
There's 3 singers. Each one of them has 2 different roles that they portray. And so they have to switch costumes and go around. So we're really making the most out of the small cast that we have. And then 1 speaker. So Franz Schönberg is an actor. He doesn't sing in the opera, which separates him from the fairy tale figures who sing the whole time.
Oh, I see. Now, opera is known for the singing and for singing also the dialogue. So is this something new, or is it acceptable to have, say, somebody reading or speaking the part?
There are already operas in the 20th century that have extended speaking passages. In Ariadne auf Naxos by Richard Strauss, there's a character that speaks the whole entire time, that doesn't sing but rather speaks. If we look at 20th century operas like Wozzeck, it's very often that not all singing, but they have the Sprechstimme, which is something in between singing style and speaking. It's like heightened speech that moves around very dynamically, but isn't exactly melody as we would say, as we would think of it. There's operetta, and musical theater, of course, has spoken dialogues interspersed with musical numbers. So it's not something that's new and revolutionary, but something that I thought was really appropriate to bringing in different dimensions in the opera and really showing the different personalities and setting the fairy tale collector apart from the fairy tale figures. And then what's interesting is that this world between fairy tale and reality eventually gets blurred. And then the question is, what is reality? In the end, well, I don't want to reveal too much. You'll have to come to Ambed to see the premiere. But in the end, it asks the question of where does that line between dream and reality occur? And there is a little bit of fairy tale figure in us all. And at what point is there the real person and the fairy tale? And the old story, stories of 300, 400 years old, and then our reality that we live in today, and kind of these worlds all come together in a very interesting musical fabric.
And this is in German?
Yes, so it's in German and elements of Bavarian dialect too, which for me is also great, because in this region, in Oberpfalz, where I'm coming to you from right now, the dialect is very much alive. In fact, on the street you hear much more dialect spoken than Hochdeutsch. And my wife is from this area, so I always have in my ear this dialect, and one of these days I'll be able to speak it back, but for now the deciphering was... So I thought it was also particularly powerful to not only bring this folk theme to the stage, but also allow the people, who many are going to the opera for the first time, to have their folk stories, but their dialect also on stage. And it's going to...
No, carry on.
And I was going to say, one other interesting thing about the festival is that this chamber opera is going to take place not in a traditional theater, but in a ringlok, which is like where they fix old trains. Like it's like a construction site, which is alternative, super cool, and very different from a theater. So it's a very alternative experience. That's you're surrounded by the dirt, by the earth, by the stones that are typical of this region. And so it'd be a really interesting way to expose people to opera for the first time in a way they're not used to.
Exactly, because it's not a grand theater or something. It's real, you know. And,
it's real, it's earthy, yeah. Exactly.
I think that's amazing. And also that you, I find it fascinating that you sort of this connection, you know, that bringing people to the art and to the art form. And I think, isn't it this now the type of thing that we all have been talking about. How do you as artists reach people? And I think this is a way, you know.
Absolutely. I think artists today, especially in music, there's a lot of experimenting going on and searching for new things, new sounds, new ways of making music, which is important. Don't get me wrong. We have to, if we don't experiment with new ways of making music, then we're going to be just repeating music of the past and probably not at the same quality of it. However, what I find very often in new music concerts is that there is a disconnect when it comes to communicating with the listener, and we have listeners sit there. And myself and the audience, we're looking around at each other trying to say, are we supposed to like this? Is this supposed to, you know, and it's not so much about liking and good or bad, but there is an element of communication which is cut off. And so for me, when I compose, it's of utmost performance to be able to communicate story, emotion, feelings, especially with my audience, whether they're professors of musicology or farmers that have never been to the opera. For me, I think that music is capable of reaching people of all backgrounds, intellectual, cultural, everything. And so I try to draw on Bavarian folk dances, on rap. That I think what's really revolutionary about this work is there's rap, Bavarian folk dance, speaking in dialect and Hochdeutsch, and fugue and counterpoint. All of these different things come together to communicate the story to the listener. And I think that's what we artists have to be doing, experimenting, but not forgetting that it's all about the connection with the audience.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking now that it's really a old, you know, it's an old, how can I say, an old story that you have now brought to life and to reality, really. So it's, you know, it's a fairy tale type of idea, thought of this person doing writing the fairy tales, but you've now made it relevant. That's amazing. Do I understand it right?
That's always been, I love, that's a big part of my style, is taking things that are old and refreshing them, renewing them, rejuvenating them, and showing that they're just as relevant now as they were before. And if we just look at them from different lenses, we see ourselves as a continuation of the past from which we're coming.
Yeah. But okay, so you say that's in July.
In July,
you
July
were telling
15,
me that,
16, 17. Yeah.
And how long did it take you to write this opera?
So this opera, being my first, there was a big learning curve and a lot of mistakes along the way. I've conducted operas and coached operas and been in the opera world, and written so many songs, but to actually make a long scale, hour-long work was particularly tricky. I would say it took me about 8 months once I got the libretto to the end of the draft. The problem was that then Corona came, and all of a sudden I had all this free time. So then I started picking and changing after I'd already sent the score to the singers. And then, so I have plenty of time, I'll change, I'll revise. And as I revise, then it wasn't necessarily making it better, the revisions. It was actually just kind of confusing the whole thing of what is the real version of this piece. Then one singer wasn't able to do it anymore, so we had a new singer, so I had to revise the part for him. So the process, that really 8 months of composing, I was able to stretch into about 2 years of work. But yeah, and even now in the rehearsal process, as to be expected, I've still made some changes to better fit the singers' voices and accommodate the space that we're in. So it's difficult to say how long exactly.
Yeah, and do you see this opera now being played again, and not just for the festival? Would it be possible to see it some other time as well?
Second performances for a composer are always the hardest thing to get. Once you have a second performance, a third and a fourth come along right away. So as of now, there isn't another performance scheduled. And since we're able to do it in front of a live audience, this will be one of the first performances I'm doing in a long time that won't be live streamed. But I am preparing an English translation of it. I would love to have it performed back home in America. And then I'm sure once we have the video that's made of it and we have the world premiere and press and enthusiasm behind us, then I'll be able to try to find some other theaters here, especially I think in southern Germany and Bavaria, because that's who it's intended for and who I think it speaks to the most.
But I mean, this storyline and the whole theme and the whole idea behind it, I think even if you translate it in English, it will still resonate with people, you know, because yeah. And then you said you were writing something else?
Yeah, so as it's funny, as I'm in the rehearsal process now for this one opera, for inSOMNIA, when we have breaks, I'm working on my second opera, which was commissioned by the other side of Germany in Oldenburg, which is very far up north, by the the Forum Neue Kunst, Oldenburg, for again a chamber opera, this time with 5 singers, 8 instruments, for a new opera festival, a new culture festival, which is starting up north. And that will be premiered in October. So as we have this upcoming October, so as we're rehearsing now inSOMNIA, during my breaks, I switch over to I have my staff paper, all my stuff, and I'm writing the second opera.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, you're still writing?
Yeah, I just signed the contract last week. I got the libretto. This libretto by Milan Chomba is brilliant. It's a krimi opera, so it's like a murder mystery, which is like very different from the fairy tale opera that I'm working on now. So it's also exciting, and it also has elements of Plattdeutsch and North German dialect. So I feel like between these 2 operas, I have the whole country covered pretty well.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I have to submit the final score by August 1st. So I'm working at lightning speed. I received the libretto in March. So March, April, May, June, July, 5 months, the opera will have taken complete. So I'm working, like I said, very, very quickly. And it's especially difficult because German is not my mother language.
Of course, yeah.
And so, you know, I keep thinking, oh, how much easier this would be if this were in English or Italian or...
But isn't it, but isn't it difficult, because I find out, even with myself being Afrikaans, to express myself in German, you know, or even in English. English is easier for me because I've been speaking that a longer time. But then, you know, it's if it's not your first language, then I can assume that it's easy. It's difficult for you to write, you know.
It's difficult because the rhythm, so language has an innate rhythm and an innate melody in it, and for me as a composer who wants to communicate through the musical language and the spoken, the colloquial language, it's important to really marry those 2 together. Technology has made this so much easier. If this were 100 years ago, I don't know how I would have done it. But I have the librettist who, with WhatsApp, will make a voice message reading each scene. And then we go on Zoom. We had a jour fixe where every Thursday we would go. He would write the scene, send it to me. I would have a recording of him speaking it, so I could hear the inflections of the language. Then we would meet up on Zoom, and we would discuss any word play, any type of subliminal messages, any type of, so that I could be fully aware of what I was going. And then my wife is Bavarian, is German, so she would also critique my work and say, no, you can't set it like that. That doesn't work. Nobody's going to understand it. So, and she's an opera singer, so she knows what she's talking about. And sometimes it's difficult to say, okay, I'm going to change my thing. But again, it's not so much about what do I want it to be. It's about what is going to communicate to the listener. And so I've had a very supporting team of people, and that we can go from Austria to Oldenburg and just talk on Zoom and get instant information that I need has facilitated the whole process.
Yeah, well, this is amazing, isn't it? That it is possible, that it can be done now. Yeah. And the style of this opera that you're writing, is it sort of a classical style, or do you bring in sort of contemporary elements in it?
So both operas are eclectic in the sense that they bring together many different styles that don't really have much to do with each other, like a fugue, like a very typical Baroque with very strict counterpoint, but on blues motif. Jazz harmonies, but contemporary, modern, what does the word modern mean? But complex rhythms, abstract textures, but there's always tonality behind it. even in the most dissonant sections. So, and then there's also moments where there's like a Zwiefache dance in the Bavarian dance in the fairy tale opera. There's love ballads. So I mean, but the love ballad will then turn into something like starting off as a love ballad and then turn into some type of creepy, dissonant something different. So there's all of these different styles that come together. It's strongly rooted in classical tradition because that's what I gain my inspiration from. But all of the devices from arias to quartets, ensembles, and even recitative, which is something that we think of really only exists in 18th century and early 19th century Italian opera. All these elements still come together, but through a different lens in a very unique but modern, eclectic way.
Okay, and do you connect them in a way through the characters, or do you just connect them sort of how it feels right for you?
So it usually depends on what's happening dramatically in the scene. There are parts, especially in this murder mystery opera, there's a lot of plot, and so a plot needs something like a recitative where the words move pretty quickly and clearly so that we understand what's happening. It's the who done it, who was the murderer, is this guy, that guy, and he said that, she said. So it can be very confusing. Then there are moments where the action kind of stops and the characters reflect on what's going on, and that's more of an aria, like more of a song texture. So that's something that I've worked out before composing with the librettist, saying, what is the story plot? How are we dividing this into musical numbers? And where do we need to deliver the plot? And where can the characters, either alone or in ensembles, reflect on what's happening? And so, and then once I know what's recitative, what's aria, I know the texture and how I'm going to set the words. And then it's just a matter of finding the harmonies, the melodies, the orchestration, the accompaniments that bring the characters' feelings to life in a tangible way in sound.
Do you, when you write, already have an idea who should play the roles, who should sing the roles?
Yeah, when in the sense, so okay, in the inSOMNIA, I knew who my singers were in advance, which makes it a lot easier because I know they were hired by the festival. I know what they do. I know what sounds good on them and what isn't going to make them sound good. And my goal is to make a singer sound good. Because if the singer sounds good, then everybody's happy. If the singer's suffering, then everybody's going to suffer. So that made it easy. In this case, in Der Telefonist is the name of this opera. I know the lead role is being sung by Nicholas Tamagna, who is an international countertenor, sung at the Met, has sung at the Wiener Staatsoper. One is an old friend and one of my favorite singers in the world. The other parts are going to be sung by students from the Hochschule, I believe in Hanover, and we're going to have auditions for it. So what I had to do then was decide, according to the character, what is the voice type, which Stimmfach, going back to my doctoral work, which works best for the role. So then also knowing that we only have 5 singers because it's a chamber opera and we're trying to keep this Corona conform. So with pretty minimal staging and no big choruses and, so we had to decide what types of voices are going to be able to do the job. Like if we're going to have a lyric mezzo soprano can sing a woman's part, but also a pants role where she's pretending to be a man.
I see.
A bass baritone will be able to give me the bass side of the bad guy, but also the lyric baritone, the more lyric side of the hero. So having to be very smart about the types of voices that I'm using was an integral part of writing the vocal lines. And then we know which voice type, then we know who we can ask to audition. I believe the audition actually happens in 2 weeks.
I see.
So I will be very curious to hear who comes out and what voices. And then of course, once we get together in Oldenburg in person to work on it, then when I hear, this doesn't fit this person, because even within a lyric baritone or a bass baritone, there are certain notes that sound better on certain people. You have clear parameters and guidelines which separate the voice types, but each voice is different. So I want to make them sound good, and I'm totally ready. Just like Rossini, Verdi, Puccini, they were all ready to change whatever they needed to do to accommodate new casts, and which is one reason why it makes it tricky today to say which is the authoritative version of this, because they were constantly changing it to meet the needs of the singers in their time.
Oh, I didn't know that. So you can during the rehearsals you can change the notes.
You have to pick your battles, because the singers, of course, they come in already to rehearsal with it memorized, and then you have chances to refine the music through the rehearsals, and then through staging rehearsals it gets repeated and repeated and repeated. And once you learn something, it's difficult to unlearn it or switch. So very early in the process, I have to make a decision: is this worth the change? Is this going to result in other long-term problems, screwing up the memory? Or if if like there's a passage repeated 3 or 4 different times and you make a tiny change one time, is that going to confuse them moving forward? So, and then there's also what just didn't sound good this time. Maybe they just made a quick mistake that every other time is going to sound beautiful. So you have to be on your toes and then decide, is it worth, is it them, is it me, is it worth the change? And so then in the second,
you have to be with at every rehearsal then. Okay. Yeah.
Which is sometimes a little bit tedious, but on the other hand, it's exciting to watch the work really come to life, and then collaborate with the director. Because the director also has an idea of what this story is supposed to look like on the stage, and I see this a million times in my head, but that's not my job to say, you stand here, you go there. That's the director's job. Luckily, in both of these productions, I have brilliant directors, Efi Eiberger in inSOMNIA and Niels Braun in Oldenburg, who are going to help bring the staging together and coordinate all of the action and movement on the stage.
But I think how wonderful is it for singers to have the composer there, so that they, that you can be saying exactly what you had in mind and how you wanted it to be. Because of course, with the old composers, that's not available to do that. It's
we had a meeting or a visit from a local school of like 15-year-old girls who came to watch the rehearsal for inSOMNIA, and they're all in a music class, and they were just surprised that I was alive, because they thought that composers, especially opera composers, they're dead, right? And I was like, I think that's one of my advantages. One of the things I have going for me is that I'm very much alive and here today. And so and that was exciting for them, because it made all of our work that much more relevant to them.
And now the costumes. Do you decide the costumes? Do you decide? Can you see how you want it?
I don't. We have the costume designer who works very tightly in tandem with the director. And of course,
do you have a say in that or not?
I have not as much of a say as I would sometimes like to. Of course, I have to respect that their area of expertise, and although it doesn't it doesn't fit exactly with how I perceived it, that I wouldn't have the costume designer changing my notes because that's my area of expertise, and I have to trust that the artistic team that's been put together, that although it doesn't conform to what I have in my mind and what I've seen a million times in my sleep and my dreams, that they know what they're doing and they know how to bring these characters to life to the audience. And that's one of the beautiful things about opera, is that you have the costume person, the set design, the prop handler, the choreographer, the director, the composer, we have the musical team for the musikalische Einstudierungen, where the singers learn the phrasing and stuff. There's so many pieces that come together, and that's what the word opera is, from opus, work, many works of so many different types of people coming together. So, as much as I like to say this is my opera, it's really a collaborative effort from many, many different heads. And I think that's really the strength of this art form and why it's survived and grown over the past 500 years.
And you see, this is what we don't always think about. And this is during this lockdown situation, this is so many people affected by one art form. Like you say now, it's not just the singers, it's not just the musicians, but it's all these people connected in a way to this art form, opera.
Even though it is a collaborative joint effort, once we're all dead, the one thing that stays fixed is the score. And so the next time that it's produced, there'll be different scenery, different costumes, different staging, but that one common denominator is that musical score. And so that's also an exciting thing for me to see how in the future this work, the words and the music, will be interpreted by other people. And maybe one day I'll be able to sit in the audience and not be conducting and waving my hands and making the music, but just to sit back and watch other people and what they would do with it.
Oh, so you are conducting this?
I'm conducting from the piano. So we have a chamber, both operas have a chamber ensemble of 8 musicians, and the piano, the grand piano in the center. So I will be performing and conducting, and fortunately I have my iPad that has the score and a Bluetooth page turner pedal, so that I can turn pages, play piano, and give cues. And so
wow. But I think this is special to see an opera where the composer is the conductor.
That's the way that it used to be. If you go back to Handel or Mozart's time, Mozart would conduct his operas from the forte piano. Handel would be leading it from one of the harpsichords in the band. Operetta, but there would also be like the first violinist who would be leading. And then it was really only in the second half of the 19th century that the opera houses started to have a person with a stick in their hand beating time who wasn't making sound.
Oh, I see.
For me, coming out of an early music tradition of playing a lot of harpsichord and leading operas from the keyboard, I find it really cool to be part of the sound and deviate even from what I've written. So as I'm there at the piano, I have the liberty to say, you know what, the audience is feeling a certain way, I'm feeling a certain way, and I improvise a lot when I play. To be married to the notes is a difficult thing for me, so I use them even in the performance as just a guideline or a starting point to bring everybody together. And so, which is cool, because then every night is going to be a different sound, a different performance. So really about that present. You have to buy tickets to all 3 performances.
Yeah, but this is what somebody said. I can't remember who I had this interview with, who said that, you know, if there are 5 performances, there are 5 different performances. You cannot, you know, that are just, it's because of so many factors that happens, you know. So that would be. But now this opera, you say is the, just say the name again.
So the first opera that's premiering in 2 weeks is inSOMNIA, because it takes place in the dream of somebody who can't fall asleep. And the second opera is Der Telefonist.
The Telefonist, okay,
Which,
and that will be in October.
That will be October 30th and 31st, which is really cool for me to perform a murder mystery that I'm writing on Halloween. I think that's also a special energy and atmosphere in the air, which is just perfect for the time.
Exactly, yeah.
And then
and where will that be performed?
That will be in a cultural center. I don't remember the name of it now.
Oldenburg.
In Oldenburg, Germany, in northern Germany.
Yeah. Wonderful. But thank you so much for talking about this. This is so interesting, and well, you know, I learned so much from you all. I never knew all these things, but what can I say? You should. I hope you get your deadline. You finish in time for your deadline, and I would love to later on, before in October, maybe before, when you have more information on how it's been happening there, we can have a chat again about this.
I'd be happy to.
Telefonist, good.
In the meantime, I'll send you some links, any information that you need to know about the performance in July.
I will,
And then we can reconvene shortly before the premiere in October of the second opera.
Definitely, Raphael, and thank you so much. And I hope you'll be cooking on Sunday again, a pasta.
That's the difficult thing. The next 2 Sundays, I have rehearsals all day for the opera. So these are going to be the first 2 Sundays since the beginning of Corona that I'm probably not going to have a chance to make fresh pasta. My heart's a little bit broken. But
I'm disappointed because, you know, my Sunday fixes your pasta dishes.
Let me see if I can put my second opera on hold for an hour and squeeze out some gnocchi or something. We'll see what happens. We'll see.
Okay. Okay, but have a lovely weekend, and hope you have a wonderful time with your rehearsals. And thank you so much for your patience with my camera that you fixed by magic for me.
It's my pleasure. It was worth the wait. I'm glad that we had a chance to
Well,
talk.
yeah, I thought when it didn't work, you kept on helping me, and I thought, well, this is perseverance for you. You know, you just didn't say, you know, give up. You just kept on coaching me through this whole setting.
That's
But
my
thank you
job. That's
so
what
much.
I do.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Great. Take care, Petra. We'll be in touch then
Thank
soon.
you. Bye.
Bye.